Welcome. There was once a knock on the door. The guy opens the door and he sees his mother-in-law standing there. It's like, wow, so nice of you to come. How long are you staying with us? She says, as long as you want. She says, really, not even tea, no coffee, nothing? Avraham Avinu was visited by 3 guests this week in the parasha. 3 special guests who were angels. He didn't know they were angels. They were disguised as humans, as travelers. And just before they came, he was visited by Hashem himself. We know after Avram had a bris at the age of 99, Hashem visits him to do the mitzvah of Bikur Chaylim, to visit the sick. Just like we have commandments to visit the sick, to help the poor, to be kind, Hashem does the very same things. And when Avram was ill, when he was in pain after his bris, Hashem came to visit him. Now, these 3 angels had particular missions, each one of the 3. One angel came to heal Avram. The second angel came to let them know that Sarah is going to have a baby. And the third one came to destroy the cities of Sodom. Sodom and Amorah was a metropolis of 5 cities, and they were wicked people, cruel people. Anyone in need, you're not allowed to, you can't do anything for them. And this was so terrible that it says Hashem decided he's going to destroy these 5 cities. Now, being that Avraham Avinu is the father of the nations, as Hashem told him, you're going to be Av, Hamoin Goyim, you're going to be a father of a multitude of nations, and he's about to destroy people, 5 cities worth, and they weren't just cities. The reason why Avram lived where he lived, and he had a tent there, is because people traveled to Sodom and Amorah, and he wanted to be hospitable and take care of guests. So he he parked himself, essentially. He moved to a very busy highway. Okay, why is it so busy? Because everyone's going to these big cities. Those 5 big cities were being destroyed. And Hashem told Avram about it. And Avram's response was, maybe not. Maybe we could find there 50 good people. And if you have 50 good people in the cities, then that's 10 per city. And the merit of those 10, Hashem should not destroy the wicked people, because there's 10 good people. And Hashem tells him, you don't have 50 people there. There are no 50 good people. And he started to negotiate or bargain and tell Hashem, well, maybe there's less. Maybe there are still some good people. And really trying to save those cities. Unfortunately, he was not successful. And the Torah tells us that Hashem went, when he finished speaking to Avram, Hashem left, so to speak. Obviously, Hashem is everywhere. But Avram returned to his place. It's very important to pay attention to this. Avram returned to his place. Okay, basically, I tried to pray. I wasn't successful. I'm going home. But then Torah tells us that in the morning, the next day, Avram woke up early, and he went to the place that he was when he spoke to Hashem. He went back to that place where he was when he spoke to Hashem. And he saw that Sodom and Amorah were indeed being destroyed. He saw it was raining down fire and sulfur and all terrible things, and they're being destroyed. The question is, what's this verse all about? Avram woke up in the morning and he went to the place where he was when he spoke to Hashem. Well, what's the significance of that? What's Torah trying to tell you here? So commentaries tell us that Avraham Avinu tried one more time to daven for these people. He tried, maybe, last night it didn't work. Let me try in the morning. And more specifically, the F.R.E.E tells us, he said, I want to ask in a way of rachamim. Yesterday when I prayed to Hashem, I was praying for din. Okay? He said these people deserve to be destroyed. That's what Hashem said. And Avraham was arguing with the judge, so to speak, the supreme judge, the king of all kings, and he says, well, maybe not. Maybe they don't deserve to die because there's some good people there. And he failed at his attempt. In the morning, he decided, you know what? I was not successful using logic or using a law in my defense or in their defense. Let's try something else. Let's try compassion. Let's turn to Hashem and say, okay, they're not deserving. We know that already. And the Sforno says, Avraham is begging Hashem, just do it anyways, forgive them. Don't let them perish. They're human. Give them another chance. Now you could say, if Avraham knew there was another tactic here, why did he wait all night? You try to do it through justice. You're not successful because they don't have enough merits. Fine. But you have another card here. And that is rachamim, compassion. You're beseeching God to be kind. So do it. Why did he go to sleep? Come back in the morning. So the Be'er Mayim Chaim tells us that Avraham Avinu understood that there are times in the day when Hashem focuses on judgment and times of the day when he focuses on chesed, on kindness. It's very important to remember this. It's actually called in Avram's name, Chesed Avram. When we say sliches before the high holidays, and we start with davening, special prayers, supplications, we ask Hashem to forgive us, to give us a good year, we do it early in the morning. Why? Because the early morning is a time of chesed, supernally in heaven, it's a kind time. Towards the evening, it's more justice. And he realized, okay, I tried now with justice. The time wasn't exactly the kindest time cosmically. Let me try again tomorrow morning when it's prone for kindness. Okay, so that's why he waited. He waited for the morning. The morning is rachamim, and so on. Now, the concept here that Torah says he went back to his place is not extra. Place is not extra. The Talmud tells us in Brachos, the very first volume of the Talmud, in Brachos, it tells us that that we learn from here, a person should have a mokim kavua. A person should have a designated spot where you daven. If you ever came into a shul, you sat down in someone's place, and you were the unlucky one that you sat in someone that's very careful about his place, they could tell you, get out, it's my place. I need to sit in my seat. We learned this from Avram. Avram had a seat. He was careful about that seat. Avram went back to his place. He always davened in the same spot. And you should daven, says the Gemara, in the same spot. And when you do that and you're missing, then in heaven they ask, where is that person? Where is the disciple of Avram? Because he's not in his regular place. Okay. Now, where does this place mean? What does it mean, this place? So we're saying it means a makom kavua, a set place in the shul. You should have a designated spot where you daven, and you always go to the same seat, and that's where you pray. But there's an argument in the commentaries, in the Mefarshim, among the Rishonim, and so on. What does it mean, a makom kavua? What does it mean to have a designated spot where you pray? According to Rabbeinu Yonah, we're not referring to a shul. When you're in a synagogue and praying, okay, you don't need a set spot, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, because the shul is your place for davening. It's referring to when you're at home, have a specific spot where this is where you pray. In this room or in this corner or by this wall, this is where you daven. But in shul, you go to shul, the whole shul is a place of prayer. Okay? What's the reason of having a designated spot at home? People should know, okay, now he's praying. You don't get disturbed. You also get into the zone because it's not a shul. But if you have always, by the window or always that corner, that wall, you daven, it creates the environment conducive for prayer. So according to Rabbeinu Yonah, we learn from Avraham, from the Gemara learns, you should have a set place. It doesn't mean a seat. This is my table, or that's my table. You want to daven today facing east and closer to the Aron Kodesh, and tomorrow you like to be by the door because there's no conversations, but it's not closer to the coffee, that's fine. As long as it's in the shul. Okay? But not everyone agrees with that. The Magen Avraham actually tells us similar to that. Magen Avraham says that when a person davens in his house, have a set place so that the household people don't disturb you. Okay? The people at home shouldn't disturb you. Have a set place where you daven. They know he's davening now. But if you see him by the table, maybe he's reading, maybe he's learning, maybe he's prepping, who knows what he's doing. It's a set place that they shouldn't disturb you. Okay. However, the Alter Rebbe tells us in Shulchan Aruch and Code of Jewish Law, Siman Tzadik, 90th section, Halacha Yud Ches, he says as follows. A person should have a set place for davening, which you don't change unless it's the tzorech gadol. For a great necessity, you could change your spot. And anyone that sets a place for davening, a particular spot, Hashem is with him. As it says, the God of Avraham is with him. As it says, Avraham had a designated spot. He got up early in the morning. He went to his spot. Because the spot was Avraham had a place where he davens. Now, not only should you have a particular shul where you daven, but in the shul itself, unlike what Rabbeinu Yena said, in a shul itself, you should have your place where you daven. And he qualifies. It doesn't have to be the exact 2 inches. Within Dalad Amis, which is about 6 feet, within that range, that's your spot. You don't have to go crazy. This is my seat. You can move over a seat on the other side of the table. But generally, this is your area where you daven. Okay, and so this is the halacha, this is the law that we have. A person that goes to shul, according to all opinions, you should have a place where you daven, which is a shul, which shul you daven in. Of course, if your schedule doesn't allow it, or you need to change because you have an early flight or something, the shul that you daven in usually doesn't have a early enough or late enough minyan for davening, that's fine. But for the most part, a person should have a set shul where they daven, and within the shul, a set place where he davens. And at home, if you're not davening in shul for whatever reason, you should have a particular spot where this is your davening spot. Again, it's a general area, but that's your place. For multiple reasons, you get into the zone, it helps you daven better. The people around you are not going to disturb you because they recognize that you're davening. And we're told, as the Gemara tells us, the Talmud says, that you are promised that Hashem will be with you, the Eibishter of Avraham, because this is Avraham's thing. So Torah is not just extra, he went back to his place. There's a reason why he went back to his place, because he had a spot where he davened. But I want to discuss for a moment, who cares? What's the difference where I daven? Which spot? Why does it matter that I have a designated spot? If I'm going to shul, okay, in your house, you don't want to be disturbed, fine. But you're coming to shul, and you have a place where you daven. Why do you have to be particular where you daven? Daven here today, tomorrow daven in the back. Maybe it's closer to the window, closer to the door, whatever. Why do you have to have a set place for davening? Before we answer that, let's address another question. And that's the idea of designated times for learning Torah. There isn't just the importance of designating a spot where you daven, but when it comes to learning Torah, we're told you should have set times. Okay? Torah is full of mitzvahs. You have 613 commandments, plus 7 rabbinic commandments, plus many customs and enactments and so on. They all have a time, a place, a measurement, right? You want to give charity, a person is supposed to give 10% of what they earn. Generally speaking, he shouldn't give more than 20% of his profits to charity. There are exceptions, but that's a general range of things. If you're taking off challah, when you're baking, you have to take a portion and give it to the kohen. These days we burn it. There's an amount that you give. Okay, your esrog has to be a certain type of esrog. It's for a certain day of the year, a week of the year, and so on. Everything has a measurement. Learning Torah is unlimited. What's the measurement for Torah? All day, all night, every waking hour? How does it work? So, while it depends, the amount of time that you have to learn depends on your particular schedule and your lifestyle. If you're working, you have less time to learn. If you're perhaps a student, you have more time to learn. If you don't have a job, your schedule changes and so on. But the mitzvah of learning is to designate times. This is when you learn. Whether you're learning in the morning, and you have to learn in the morning and at night, but you're learning for 3 hours or you're learning for 20 minutes. You decided this is the time that I learn Torah. And it's set. And you're careful about it. Okay, the Alter Rebbe tells us in Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Nun Hey, 155, he says, every Yid, Kol Ish Yisrael, whether he's poor or he's wealthy, whether he's healthy or, God forbid, he has pains and suffers physically, even if he's a poor person that's walking around knocking on doors to try to get something to eat, even a person that has a wife and kids and he's therefore busy and overwhelmed, he's doing carpool and homework and all these good things. Nonetheless, you have to have a time to learn by day and by night. You must set times for learning Torah. And those times have to be set, specific. The Kaf HaChaim brings that the Rama wrote that a person should be koveya. You should, what's the right? So you should set a specific time. Set a particular time. This is when you learn. Not today, I'm going to learn at 2 p.m. Tomorrow, I'll learn at 5 p.m. Maybe at night, maybe in the morning. Set your times of learning. If you can learn more, learn more. But be careful and diligent to stick to your times of learning. So not only do we have the importance, which we're trying to understand the why, of a set spot for davening in the shul, on your schedule, when it comes to learning, you should have set times to learn. And they're important to you and that you do that. Why are they so important? Why does it matter that I have a scheduled time that I learn? So first of all, it's an organized way of living. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing when. But we find in Hasidic works, and the Rebbe brings it in Hayom Yom, that the Baal Shem Tov was a Mesuder. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidus, was an organized person, systematic and orderly. And everything worked in a way of the Maggid as well, his successor, Mezritcher Maggid, was, hello everyone that's watching online, by the way, and we encourage you to ask questions and share this with your friends. If you're watching on the replay, we'll try to answer and address your comments in a timely fashion. But the Maggid of Mezritch, thank you, was also very orderly. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad Hasidus, which was the successor of the Maggid, he taught his Hasidim to be orderly. So much so that you see this in his Maimarim, in his Hasidic discourses, in his songs, his melodies have a system, how they work. In his writings, everything, there's an order, there's a seder to things. It's not just inspiration flying in all sides. Even to come visit the Rebbe, which that's part of what Hasidim do, he has a particular time of the year that you come. One person is for Shavuos, one person is for Yom Kippur, whatever it is. If you want to change that, you needed a good reason. Because in your life, you have to have system and order. Okay? And it's something which, from the earliest of times, Hasidim were very focused on. It's something called Kviyas B'Nefesh. You're setting a time, not just on the calendar, but in your soul, you're setting a time. This is when I learn. It's not just 2 o'clock. My being is set that I learn at a certain time. It's a permanent thing. It's important. It's a priority.
Why?
We're going to get to that. This question, by the way, was asked to the Alter Rebbe by one of the opponents to Hasidus, and they had I don't want to call it a debate, but they set up someone to ask questions on behalf of the community that was opposing the Hasidic teachings. His name was Rabbi Yeshua Tzeitlin, great scholar, and he asked the Alter Rebbe, "What's this idea? What's Hasidus accomplishing? What don't you have that you're accomplishing?" And he says, "I told you already a lot what Hasidus accomplishes and the value that it brings to Jewish life. However, I'll tell you more so. By you guys," he said, "your kviyas is about time. Kviyas bizman. You got to be there, and this is how you do it at this and this time, and that's your kviyas. But what Chassidus is trying to teach, it should be kviyas b'nefesh. It should be ingrained. It should be set in your soul. This is who you are. It's not just what you do at a certain time, but it's part and parcel of you." Okay, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe, brings in the Maimer, it's a very monumental hemshech, B'shal Sheikdimu, and he says this that we're told. Chazal tell us, "Asay teiras chakva u'malachtecha aray." Make your Torah permanent, but your work, your profession, your vocation, make that temporary. In other words, that's more transient. It means regarding kviyas b'nefesh, when things are set in your soul, when they're in place, keep them. Certain things have to have priority, and nothing changes them. Okay? Imagine you have a conflict, something comes up, right? You want to learn with somebody, but then you have some kind of conflict. When do you say, "Oh, sorry, I'm busy, I have something came up"? You put the learning aside, or you put the other thing aside? If you have a choice. And it depends in your mind, what's a priority? By setting a time on the schedule, it creates it as a priority that you don't change it. Obviously, if something comes up, there's no choice, you could change it with an exception. But the fact that it's scheduled makes it kviyas b'nefesh. That's our focus. It should be part of who we are. It should be important and valuable to us. The last mimer that was published, one of the last mimer of the previous Rebbe, which the Rebbe starts his first mimer based on that mimer, he talks about the concept, Basi Lagani. He talks about the concept that certain people, their times of eating is unchangeable. That's what the world says. You have to eat in the morning. This is my breakfast time. I can never switch that. He could have a business issue. He could have some other type of important meeting. He will schedule everything around not to miss his times of his meals, whether it's lunch or dinner. I can't miss that. Why shouldn't it be the other way around? He says, your learning and your davening should be so important to you that you schedule everything else around that. When possible, but at least it's a priority. The way to start with that is to have a set place, a set time. Because when you have a set time, then it's set in your being, it's set in your nefesh. Let's go back to our question about makim kavua. It's a similar thing. When you have a set place, it becomes important, it becomes permanent, it becomes a connection in your heart. This is mine, this is here, this is my place, this is where I go to daven and so on. It's not just a fly-by-night. He stopped in, okay, I davened, whatever, it's a train station. When you have a designated spot, it has that value of kviyas b'nefesh, and as the Ben Ish Chai says, it's kviyas in the leiv, in the heart. Ben Yehuda, sorry. Okay. Now I want to spend a little more time discussing another plus, another value when you have a set place for davening. Okay, so let's recap for a second. Okay, we have a concept that Avraham went back to his place to try to daven to Hashem again. His place teaches us, says the Gemara in Brachas, that you should have a set place for davening. Different opinions if it's in your house only or also in shul. The halacha is even in shul you have to have a set place, at least within Daled Amos, which is your place. Again, you can move over one spot or the other side, but for the most part, it's a general area. The reason why we do that is first we explained the importance of putting a designated time to learn Torah, because when it's designated, it becomes part of you. It becomes important. It becomes one of those things that everything else should revolve around that, and not vice versa. And when you have a set place, it accomplishes the same thing. When it's set, it becomes important to you. It becomes permanent, and you only change it when there's a real necessity. But to take this a little bit further, when God gave the commandment to make a Beis HaMikdash, to make it a tabernacle, a Mishkan, He said, "V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham." You should make for me a mikdash, a tabernacle, a temple, and I'll dwell among them. And of course, we know them is plural, to teach us that every person has to create his own sanctuary. Every person has his own temple. Every person has his own place of worshiping. And practically speaking, in your own house, in your own place of work, in your own, wherever you are, you have to be able to set your own mikdash. This is your temple. And you do that by having holy things there. When a person has F.R.E.E, not sitting on a shelf. You know the joke about the guy that went to the bookstore and he asked if he could have 4 feet by 18 inches worth of dark red books. So what do you mean? What kind? What set? I'm not sure what set that is. He's like, no. I just need it because it fits in my color scheme in my bookcase. Books are meant to be used. They should be out of the bookshelf. They should be on your table. They should be, if they're being used. The Rebbe actually says on a different note that when a siddur is all worn out, almost ripped, it's actually a positive thing. Don't go ripping the books, but it's a positive thing because it's being used. It's not a museum. It's meant to use. But back to our concept of creating a sanctuary. When you are in your home, of course you have books there and Svarim. When they're out, when you're using them, even when you're not using them, but they're out, it brings a light to the whole area. There's a holiness that's taking place here. And it's the same concept. You have a permanence. It's not, if I'm going to learn something, let me grab something, I'll put it back. There's my life, and I stepped out of my life when I found some free time to learn. I stepped out of my life. I walked into a shul and I found the first empty spot and I davened. It's designated. It's on my schedule. It's a kviyus. It's set. Then it becomes set in my neshama, in my existence. It becomes set. It's a permanence in my life, and it impacts the surroundings. What that does is it elevates not just the person, but your entire household. Your home gets elevated. It becomes a mikdash, because the spiritual parts of life are permanent. They're important. They're a extreme priority in your life. So let's learn from Avraham, have a set place to daven. Let's follow what the Shulchan Aruch says, to have set times for learning. I suggest 10:15 in the mornings, Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Thanks for joining. Have a wonderful day. See you again tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Continue our learning.
He actually saw the rain of fire, or he figured out it's too late to daven?
No, he saw. It says that he